All right, everyone. Trump has condemned all political violence in the country and racial violence once again. The left is outraged at this. You see, they passed a condemnation of, like, the KKK, Nazis and stuff. And they wanted Trump to sign on to the condemnation, and he did. But he attached a signing statement making it clear, hey, Americans reject all political and racial violence, not just that coming from, someone who's a skinhead. They're actually angry at this. I can't imagine why. See, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there are people in this country who want us to only fixate on right-wing or white violence and ignore everything else. I wonder why that could possibly be. Why would you want us to ignore, like, Antifa, or the rise of the social justice alt-left? Why would you want us to ignore such things? Is it because you agree with them? Probably. And there's a lot of guilt by association going on right now. This is the stuff with Trump getting attacked for condemning political and racial violence. This is just a part of it. Like, that's the DC component. But go online sometime and say, yeah, I think that people should be able to speak freely even if they have, like, weird out there beliefs, like they're a skinhead or something. That doesn't negate their First Amendment rights until they start throwing punches or Molotov cocktails. And see what happens. Guilt by association. What happens now is, if you simply support free speech, you are a Nazi, according to these people. And I mean, someone on there yesterday on Twitter was basically like, if you recognize, my response, link in the description, my response to it was basically in altered quote form. If you recognize that not everyone called a Nazi is actually a Nazi, you are a Nazi. That seems to be the logic that's being used right now. You've got this situation, it's a lot like, gay people in the 90s. If somebody was gay back then, and people started, like, harassing them, and you said, well, I'm not into harassing them, I don't really see the problem. Like myself, I didn't fucking care then either. It was funny, but, why bully somebody over it? It's like, do what you want. You'd get called gay too. So over time, like, I can remember being called gay by some people back then simply because I didn't care if people were gay. And later on, like, at the time, though, as a 90s kid, though, when you're, like, that young, the thought never entered in my mind of gay marriage, so that wasn't really the issue. It was more like, should gays or should not gays be openly harassed and attacked for being gay? And, of course, I'm like, well, no, why? There's no point to it. And so at the time, like, I'm a fairly small kid at the time. I'm in elementary school. I'm getting called gay by people because I'm not interested in cracking constant jokes about gay people. Like, you're supposed to condemn them or you are one of them. That seems to be what's happening now. It happens at other times, like back in the Satanic Panic. Oh, this person is a Satanist, we should all condemn them. And you're like, well, I'm not sure that they're actually a Satanist. Like, the term was overstretched. They're just a goth or a punk, or okay, they have a couple Iron Maiden albums. They're a Satanist, they're a devil worshipper, we must condemn them. Well, how do we know they're a Satanist? Oh, you must be a Satanist, you're trying to defend them. It's the same fucking shit that went on back then. That's what they're doing now. But if you say that you condemn all racial or political violence, they say, oh, you're trying to take away from far-right and white supremacist violence. Therefore, you must be one of them, or at least an apologist for them. No, it means you have common sense and you don't like seeing violence. I don't care if somebody's a racial supremacist if they're leaving other people alone and not attacking them. If they're abiding by the law, they're not making victims out of people, I don't really care what they say. The same goes for Antifa. I don't care if Antifa shows up on the corner and protests. I don't care if they show up and wave the hammer and sickle. I don't care if they show up with masks on and anything else. I don't care if they show up armed. But once they start actually attacking people, it's a different story. There's the proper cutoff. The proper cutoff is between words and either actions or the direct incitement of action. Like, if you're in a crowd of people, like it's a peaceful protest, but then you point out someone and say, let's go get them, let's beat them to the ground. You haven't actually beaten them to the ground, but you are trying to incite others to do so. That's a crime. It's fairly clear. But there are a lot of people, like there's that Nutty Professor on Tucker Carlson. Now, again, I don't watch Fox or TV in general, but I saw it posted around the internet 'cause, oh, it was so funny. he was talking to this, professor, I guess he was. And he's like pro-Antifa, pro-far left. You know, he's the standard commie light, who doesn't understand that with his professor's salary, he'd be one of the bourgeois getting put in the rock quarry if communism ever took over. Everyone always thinks that they're going to be the one that's chosen to be the Joseph Stalin of the next communist regime. It's just like everyone assumes that they're going to be the Hitler of the next like white nationalist uprising. You see the same thing with like groups on the alt-right. Oh yeah, I would be like some total SS general or something. I wouldn't be one of the little peons digging trenches. I wouldn't have to do that. But this professor here, who has a neck that is longer than any other neck that I've ever seen in human history. It's like he injected himself with giraffe DNA. Are they doing some sort of weird medical experiments on this campus? I'm not exactly sure. But he's saying, well, I think it's perfectly acceptable for groups, you know, remarking on Antifa and stuff, to defend themselves. And Carlson's like, well, yeah, no shit. But what do you mean defending? And gets out of him, of course, what he actually means is preemptively assaulting people for having the wrong beliefs. That's the mentality of the alt-left. They're still trying to deny that there is such a thing as the alt-left. So there's an alt-right, but there's no alt-left. Don't use that term. No, 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 please don't use that term. See, they're afraid of it. The left is afraid of their own terminology being inverted in upon themselves, and it is inevitable that it will be. Okay, well, then I won't use the term alt-left. I'll just say generally violent, intolerant, sometimes racially motivated people on the far left. Okay, does that work for you? See, isn't it so much easier to just say alt-left? Isn't that so much easier as a general overarching category for, I mean, are you saying that you are like that and you just don't want me labeling you because you don't like that label? Because, I mean, you do that to people who aren't part of the alt-right. You do that to people like me. Like, I've had people try to claim I'm part of the alt-right. I'm a fucking libertarian. It would be harder for me to be further from fascism, either left or right. Then they get it wrong on libertarianism, too, and they say, well, it's not even for freedom. It's only for freedom for the rich or corporations. Okay, you're mixing the Ayn Rand objectivists a la Paul Ryan, who fit in with the Republican Party, with people who have never held substantial political power in the last century. Okay, those two are not the same thing. You have to go back quite a distance to find anyone who approaches the libertarian. You have to go back to the Revolutionary era and find some classical liberals in order to, Thomas Jefferson, maybe George Washington, somebody like that who never got it in their mind that half of the legalese we have now would ever possibly exist, because it was what they were fighting to get away from in the first place. Even before the founding of the United States, people came here to get away from oppression. Now they're like, oh, we invite more oppression. We want more state control, more intervention. Yeah, control everything. Private industry, oh, it's abusive, it's evil. It's evil for people to have businesses and make money. But yeah, Trump, he's just condemned all political and racial violence. How is that a bad thing unless you support, I guess, leftist violence and don't want it being called out? What, you're saying that Antifa doesn't exist, doesn't show up to throw rocks and piss bottles? Look, just because Hare gets run over by someone who's on the alt-right doesn't mean there weren't Antifa members there throwing rocks at the police already. There's your problem. Such a situation can only get out of control if both sides are being violent anyway. Somebody's presumably defending themselves. Who's throwing the first punches? Who even fucking cares? But there's violence anyway there. So I would condemn certainly groups like Antifa. I see most of the violence that appears to be occurring is occurring because far leftists show up to try to silence speech, and they are defended against by people on the right. Most of these people they're not even racialists. You're talking about people like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro's a token neocon. Ann Coulter's like a paleocon. Milo's a sort of, I don't know what you term, he's sort of a quasi-libertarian satirist. You know, it's like if Trump shows up, they try to cause violence there too. Trump is not a white supremacist. I'm sorry, but if you think that, you've got difficulties in your mental faculties. I'm sorry, but you've been lied to way, way too many times by the corporate media if you actually take that seriously. Way, way too many times. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, white supremacist, he appoints Ben Carson to lead HUD. He likes Ben Carson, shakes his hand, grins with him, and pounds his fist, and then ignores everybody else on other than Christie, who's up on the stage at the time. He actually gets along with Carson. Oh, he's such a racist. Nobody ever called Donald Trump a racist before he ran in this election. No, glowing praise was given to him for everything under the sun. He was hanging out with Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson. Nobody ever called him a Nazi. Nobody ever said he was a white supremacist. Don't you think that's a little bit odd that all of a sudden you've gobbled down? Like, you used to say, don't trust the corporate media, 'cause it's like lying to you. They're supporting the war. They're supporting, like, bigotry. Now you say, oh, just support the corporate media. They would never lie to you. Yeah, you sold out totally. All these people are sellouts. Yeah. It doesn't make me angry so much as it makes me chuckle, because we've been through this before, and if they had any intellect at all, they would know better. This is no different than saying, oh, well, you defended the gay kid in class, so you must be gay. You didn't want to beat the goth girl up, so you must be like a secret devil worshiper. Oh, you don't want to go to church and condemn Ozzy Osbourne, therefore you must be into Satanism. It's the same thing, people. Guilt by association, overstretching of terms, using false categorizations for anyone you disagree with. It's the same intellectual spew. It's sputum. It's intellectual dishonesty at its finest. It's peak moral panic. That's what we've now attained. That's about all. Peace out.